Passit or Minicram, which is actually better to help you pass your exams? As someone who's tutored over 500 students in the last 2 years, I can tell you they're both handy tools, but it really just depends on what exactly you're looking for. As a short option for practice questions and interactiveness, choose Passit, but for notes and a budget-friendly option, choose Minicram. But of course, there's tons of great alternatives out there, and a lot of them are already there for free. So I'll be going through all these stuff in this video, so make sure you stick around till the end. Okay, so first of all, Passit is a study guide with tons of different interactive features to help you get better prepared for your exam. Among their features, they have practice questions, which you can practice by individual modules or all together for the entire course, kind of like a mock exam. They have flashcards, which help with the terminology for different concepts in the course. They have notes, which is sort of a shortened version of what Passit thinks is useful for your exam and is the most important. And obviously they have progress tracking, which helps you track your progress across the questions, your scores, and helps you see kind of how you're doing throughout the whole study guide. Now, in addition to all of these things, obviously Passit is interactive. It has a 10-week access, and the price can range anywhere from $30 to $50 per study guide. So initially, Passit actually seems really good. There's tons of pros, it's very interactive, and it actually seems really, really helpful at first glance. However, there are a lot of cons as well. First of all, Passit's 10-week access means that if you take anything longer than that, you're probably gonna have to repurchase Passit to make sure that you are ready for your exam. And in my experience tutoring a lot of people, this tends to be the case a lot more times than not. Even though you might not have expected it, this is usually what happens to a lot of people. Secondly, Passit's material can be slightly misleading. There's a lot of times where their study notes or even their questions can be a little bit off of what you're going to see on the exam, a little bit irrelevant. They test you on random questions, and the wording is obviously going to be entirely different than what you're going to see on the exam. So a lot of times, although this is great practice, it can also trigger sort of a shock when you get to the exam. And this has happened to a lot of people that I've tutored who use only Passit to study. They get to the exam and they find out that it's totally different, and it can be slightly unnerving once you get to that exam day. In my experience, although this is present with all the courses, the sort of irrelevancy that Passit throws throughout the questions and study notes, C1 and C2 study guides are actually quite good for Passit. And so in my experience, a lot of students have used Passit for those courses, have actually liked them, and have done well. However, for C3 and C4, Passit study guides get a little bit iffy, and you're going to start seeing a lot more irrelevant content, a lot more things that are misleading, and the questions are going to be totally different than what you're going to see on the exam. So if you are choosing which course to use it for, C1 and C2 are a great option. C3 and C4 by reviews, generally not as great. Now, I've already mentioned that Passit can be a bit misleading, and it can be irrelevant in terms of concepts and the actual wording for the questions that you're going to see on the exam. However, an additional point is what happens to a lot of people is they start tracking their score in Passit and using that as a final said be all kind of conclusion of whether they're ready to take the exam or not. And so if they see their score is 60% in Passit, they conclude they're not ready. And if it's 90%, then they conclude they're ready. And in my experience, I've seen, although it can be more or less close to what your score will be on the exam, it's not at all a correlation. I've seen tons of people get 60% and pass the exam, and tons of other people get 90% and still fail the exam. So I wouldn't use it as an end-all, say-all kind of score. And this is really, really negative for a lot of people because it ends up discouraging them when they end up practicing a lot of questions. And then they start doing question after question after question just so that they can increase the score. So make sure you don't fall into that trap. The score is important, yes, to help us generally see our progress, but it is not the say-all, be-all kind of conclusion. You have to know for yourself, based on how well you know the content, the notes, the concepts itself. That's really going to tell you whether you're ready or not. So with all that being said, Passit is a great tool, especially for C1 and C2, but take it with a grain of salt because a lot of stuff are going to be out of the box in terms of your exam. Now, although some people have done it before, I know this is going to be a very common question. It's typically not enough to just use Passit to pass your exam. Now, yes, people have done it before and they've passed the exam just with Passit, but my recommendation is that there are also a lot of people that fail that you don't hear about because obviously they failed. And so they don't want to advertise that. And so if you are using Passit, I would still suggest to use something else, some sort of notes, something to help you kind of substitute because the questions are just not going to be enough. Now on to Minicram. Minicram is a condensed guide of study notes with similar notes and practice questions as Passit. Their features include summary notes, which are basically summarizing the entire course, so much more in depth than what you're going to see in Passit. They also have practice questions, which are similar to Passit, but they have multiple choice and they have true or false as well. They have flashcards to help you help with the terminology. And they also have a keynote section, which is helpful to see kind of the most important things for the exam, as per what Minicram thinks it is. Now, in addition to this, you don't actually need a kind of 10-week access like Passit. It's a PDF format, so it's actually a one-time purchase, and you get to keep that copy forever. And the price can range anywhere from $10 for sort of a C1 study guide notes to about $32 if you're buying something like the practice questions. So at first glance, Minicram does offer a lot of the similar features, however, it's just not as interactive as Passit. Everything's going to be in note format and PDF format, and so you're still going to have all the similar kind of things, but it's just not as gamified. You're not going to be able to track your progress the same way Passit does for you. Now, this doesn't mean that Minicram's totally worse. It just means that some things are better here and some things are better with Passit. For example, Minicram's notes are much more in depth than Passit's are. However, the notes are pretty much kind of like reading the Humber slides. They're very robotic, they're not very straightforward, and they can be a little bit confusing when you end up reading those notes. However, they do have notes on the entire course, which Passit does not. In terms of the questions itself, well, Passit's questions are a little bit better for the exam. Minicram's questions are written just like their notes. They're going to be robotic. They might test you on stuff that are on the exam, but there's also going to be tons of irrelevant material as well. So in terms of notes, yeah, Minicram is the better option. But in terms of questions, practice questions themselves, and progress tracking, then you're going to find Passit is probably going to be a little bit better. Now, comparing the two, although it does seem that Minicram is cheaper at first, especially because it's just a one-time purchase, the thing is they sell their notes and their questions separately. And so what happens if you want to buy the C1 notes and the C1 practice questions, you're probably going to end up paying the same amount as if you were just to buy the Passit study guide itself. So don't compare in price because it's probably going to end up being the same. I would rather compare on terms of the features, in terms of are you looking more for notes or are you looking more for questions. However, like I said, Minicram, even if you are choosing that for notes, there are better options out there, and a lot of them are already free. And that's what I'm going to cover next. Now on to the bonuses. So like I said, Passit and Minicram are one of many options. There's tons of great available things out there. And if you are looking for notes, there's so many free versions out there already. So a lot of people that have already done the course before you, they've actually written their own notes and they've released them online. So you can probably find, just by searching here and there, you're probably going to find someone's notes that you can use for free. And if you can't, then you can check the description below. I've already given my notes out for free. Those are the ones that I made when I was studying the course, and you can just download them and use them instead of having to pay for Minicram or Passit, if that is what you're looking for. Now, if you want to download those notes individually, you can get those from the website. However, if you do want extra stuff like checklists, free videos, free Zoom classes and webinars, then all of those stuff I host in my Facebook group for free. So you can check those out too. You can join the group. It's absolutely free. And you can see if it helps you, just like, the other 1,000 members that we have as well. Now, those are the free options. However, if you are willing to invest in yourself and you're looking for a little bit of extra support than kind of Passit and Minicram, which are sort of this online self-study kind of method, then you can check out the study groups I host below. I run them every month anyways, and I keep the spots limited, so it's no biggie for me. But if you think they might be helpful, then you can shoot me an application below and we can see if we have spots left and if it's even going to be a good fit for you. Now, these study groups are super fun. I host them myself, and if you've seen some of the other videos on my channel, then you probably already know my teaching style. So I teach the whole course in the same way, but we stay very exam focused. I'm going to give you exactly what you need for the exam, what's the most important parts, and we're going to go through tons of visual slides, annotated forms, practice notes, practice questions, and tons of other things as well that's going to help you to actually pass the exam. And so when we cut out all this BS and this repetition, most of the students, they only really study 1 to 3 hours a day, and they're able to pass within about 3 weeks. So they're really good sessions if you want to get through the courses in a short amount of time. Now, these are not for everyone. First of all, these are very intensive sessions. So if you are very busy, then these are not really going to work because you do need to try and be consistent. And obviously the group is going to help with that, but primarily it is your effort that goes into these. So if you're somebody who likes to take a lot of time to study the notes, the questions, and really kind of take like days, weeks, or months to do a course, then that's totally doable and that might fit with your schedule. But then these probably won't be as great for you because these are just a little bit more rapid. So those are just 3 of the many possible alternatives to help you pass your exam. And so I'll put the links in the description for Passit, Minicram, and of course my study groups as well. And so if you think they're going to be helpful, check them out and give me a comment below which one is better for you. Okay, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you guys in the next video.